Talk to me about what the symbolic world is. My last conversation with Jonathan and my last conversation with John Vervaeke, it was interesting because I didn't really ask them, but both of them sort of unwittingly said, I'm not trying to start a community.
Hmm.
And when I heard that, I thought, huh. But you have obviously a past as a Christian minister,
Yeah.
which and a preacher, which is sort of local church pastors are sort of multi-tools. You have to be.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
what when you think about the symbolic world, especially now that you have a bigger part to play in it, and it's good that most artists I know can't really run things very well. So it's I'm glad you're there. Um, but tell me about what you think the symbolic world is or what it should be.
Boy, it's like every conversation we've been having the last few weeks.
With who?
Yeah.
With
Oh, well,
Jonathan
yeah,
or
Jonathan and the other people who are involved. We have
okay.
a kind of a core group of really great people who are really committed to putting some time and effort into making the symbolic world. I mean, there's sort of two things, right? There's the symbolic world as such, or like the symbolic world as the thing that Jonathan, and then there's the press, right? And those are actually sort of still kind of distinct entities, and trying to figure out how those two things relate to each other is a very interesting question. I mean, so here's the tricky thing is I have to talk about Jonathan, who's, my partner and my friend and everything else on a channel where he's most certainly going to see this video later. But and it's dangerous to praise somebody to their face, but he's just a wonderful person.
Oh, he
And
is. He
I'm
is.
I'm I just feel uh when you see somebody sort of like handle the worst situation, or when you see them handle stress or whatever, that's when you really learn who somebody is. And I feel really grateful to be working with him. And so my goal right now is to basically I want to make him as successful as possible. That's my goal for what we're doing together is to if we can get the um how do I say this? Anyway, that's my goal. Like as far as like building up the business and everything else
Well,
goes.
what do you mean by successful?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think that Jonathan has some beautiful stories that he's going to be telling. The fairy tale books that he's working on, and God's Dog, and some other things we're hopefully going to work on together in the future. And I think that if we can't be good stewards of those things, and we're not, so I mean, people know, I mean, this is public knowledge that the Snow White Kickstarter had some major problems associated with it, and that's one of the things that I came in to help with. And so we've kind of worked through that, and everybody's getting their books now and so on, and now we can start thinking about what are the projects that we want to do in the future. But I think that whatever the symbolic world is, I mean, at the end of the day, there's two things that I want. One is I want to see Jonathan be able to tell, and hopefully I get to be involved in this, but I want to see Jonathan to be able to tell these stories that he's working on, and that are so beautiful and life-giving, and that have this capacity to, you could say, um, contribute to the creation of some kind of a beautiful culture. Um, and maybe uh without like serious money and friends in high places and all these different things, it'll probably just be a culture around people's kitchen tables, but that is
Hmm.
more important anyway to me. And I mean, this is a sort of a tangent, but it's one of these things where you so my oldest daughter is 12, and she has lived a by any sort of definition of the word, a sheltered life, in the sense that not in the sense that we don't let her watch movies or listen to music or like whatever, but in the sense that she's lived at home, she's been schooled at home. We have intentionally sort of not exposed her to a lot of things that you're already exposed to by the age of 12 now.
Is she a Swiftie?
She's not.
Okay.
She's not. She has listened to a Taylor Swift song now and then, and I don't really mind that. But also like we've raised her to have good taste. I don't know what else to say. But anyway, so listen, we can talk about the Swiftie thing if you want to. We
Go
can
on.
talk
I'm
about
sorry.
this
I
if you
should
want
not have
to.
interrupted.
No, it's okay. We can come back around to that because I have a couple of fun stories about it. Um, but the reason that but now she's hitting an age where we have to, so like one of her school assignments right now is being um is like basically like keeping a log of current events. And so we were talking about what are some sources we could go to find out what's happening in current events. And so my wife suggests, well, why don't we go to whitehouse.gov and see what's posted there? And so you pull it up and there's this huge, Dr. Jill Biden speaking at a Pride Day celebration or Pride Month celebration
Picked a
right
heck
on
of
the
a month to follow current
I
events.
oh my gosh. Oh dude. Dude, so again, as an aside to my aside, some people complain that I talk this way, but it's the only way I know how to talk is eventually we loop back around to things. As an aside to my aside, uh, I was really heavily involved in politics as a teenager. I worked for multiple state representative and U.S. House of Representative campaigns, as well as one state Senate campaign. So I was heavily involved. I walked pavement. I knocked on doors. I worked at phone banks. I stuffed envelopes. I moved packages onto campaign buses. All this stuff. Um, um, the experience and the exposure that I had to the political process and the people who are attracted to it and the people who work in it basically made me deeply cynical about any political party to the point that I more or less refuse to participate in the process now. I say more or less, I do vote at least in local elections, but man, it would take an actual miracle for me to have any kind of and I say this by the way, like well, anyway, it would just take an actual miracle to make me, when like every vote counts, like it and I know all the arguments because I used to make those arguments, but after sort of like seeing the things that I've seen, like it's just very hard for me to be politically involved. But anyway, all that to say, so most of the time I just ignore the stuff. Honestly, I just ignore it. I don't know, what demon tempted me to tune into the debate this last week. That was that was something. I tell you what, that was something.
I didn't watch it. I
I do have a
couldn't have the
personal
stomach
I
for
do
it.
have a personal rule to never publicly criticize a sitting president.
Hmm.
And I started that rule because I got annoyed when other pastors did it from the pulpit,
Hmm.
and and the way that, around a certain time, it's not that Christians shouldn't be involved in politics or anything like that, but it sort of it just really irked me. And so I just decided, well, I'm not going to be a part of that problem, and so I still have that rule. But geez Louise, guys, that was really something. So anyway, there you go. But ooh, so we went to like whitehouse.gov for current events, and of course this, so I'm not going to shelter my child from the fact that, Pride Month is happening and all this other stuff, but also to kind of talk about what is it and what drives it, and is it really about you care about people, or is there a kind of like a cynical, you know, anyway, all these things, and so we're kind of like talking through that, and there was some other stuff. Somehow my daughter got wind of, or was looking over my shoulder or something like that, and saw some images from a church that had been bombed in Gaza, and just started weeping, and she was like, I don't understand, like how could and so we anyway, that was an opportunity for us to talk about war and why things happen in war, and and anyway, so I say all this to say my kids are I've tried to give them as good a start as possible, right? But now they're growing up in this world that's deeply horrific and really violent and really ugly and really evil in a lot of different ways. And I think that the stories that Jonathan is trying to tell are uh uh the if not the remedy for all of that, they're at least a vision of um, a light glimmering in a dark wood. Maybe you can make it to that cabin. And so for me, we'll be successful if we can get those things into people's hands, and people can read them to their kids. At the end of the day, that's the thing that really matters to me. So I'm really happy to be a part of that. Um, So that's part of, the press side of things. As far as the community side of things goes, I don't really know. I mean, um, obviously there is a community. Jonathan didn't try to start one, and he really tries not to be like people's guru, which I think is good and healthy. Um, and but obviously there is a community of people. I sort of my natural impulse with things like that is just to let it happen naturally and to not try to force it and to not try to like manage it. And so in that sense, I'm not really worried about it too much. I myself, uh, because I work a lot and because I have a lot of things going on the home front and, involved in my own church and stuff, that's really my community. When it comes to online stuff, like I can never even keep up with, I can't keep up with the discussion forums and what's going on in this little corner and all this different things. And so every time I sort of dip my toe in, I'm like, the discourse has moved on. You guys have new nomenclature for things, and I don't know what the like. Sometimes we like, oh, Paul's dropped a video. I'll go tune in, and like you're using a new term because you sometimes coin new terms for things, and I don't know what you mean by that. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
there's probably like 30 videos I need to go watch to find out like fully what you mean by this, and that's fine. Keep doing the things that you're doing, but it's
I
just one of
totally
those
get that.
things.
You can't go back and watch 30 videos. I completely
Yeah.
understand that.
So like online, my community really isn't online. It's mostly my family and my church and the people that I work with, and that's and so
Which
as
is
far as like
how it should be. I mean, you're
and
not going to
so
get any pushback
yeah,
from me in that.
but the thing is like I do watch, like the so Symbolic World, we do have like a circle community. Like it's a sort of basically a private social network, right? It's really just a forum with private messaging and everything else. So people post things all the time, and a lot of these things are just like wonderful and insightful, and it's got a very it's just a very friendly place. It's just a very friendly place, where whereas well, anyway, and so it's lovely, and I don't really, I do try to read things when I can. I don't usually get involved too much in the discussion just because I don't have the time, but it seemed but there are people like this one wonderful young man who has been running like book clubs, and we did some courses. We just recently did a Dante's Inferno course, and so he was like hosting an after party on Discord after everyone, and I popped in for the last one, and it was fun. Like it was really fun, but also I feel like if I did that sort of thing too much, it would probably kind of ruin the vibe. So anyway, I don't know. I honestly like I think it's really dangerous to kind of like overthink what you're doing sometimes, and dangerous especially when it comes to like building a community or something. It'd be so easy to just disappear up your own, well, and so in that sense, I just want to tell good stories and make beautiful books, and along the way we're going to do hopefully a lot more courses. The Beowulf course that we did together and the Dante's Inferno course that we did together were both a lot of fun. And it's nice. I like the long form course format because when you're podcasting and I mean, this goes back to what I was saying a moment ago. Like when you're podcasting, there's the sense that you're always sort of starting from zero, because like what if a new guy drops in and now I got to explain this term and things like that. But with a course, you can say, all right, we're all committed. We're all here for the long haul. So over the course of the next 5 or 6 weeks, we can do like a 3 hour series of 3 hour videos where we build iteratively, on these narratives or on these concepts or whatever. So that's how I like to teach. And I really love teaching. It's probably the thing that I love the most in the world. So getting to do that with Jonathan on two things, Beowulf and Dante, which are my favorite things to teach about, other than the Bible, was just awesome. It was just great. So yeah, those are things I'm excited about, and uh, I think one of the things that my dad taught me well was that you'll have the most fulfilling version of your life if you try to focus on making other people successful. And what success looks like, in this case, like I said, is at the end of the day, I want people to get Snow White, and I want them to get it so that they can, so that they, and all the other stories too, so that they can read these stories to their children, so that something beautiful. I mean, man, there was a short story I read. I think it was by Josh Gibbs, but I don't remember now. And it was about this. about this girl who'd kind of like sort of the prodigal son had spent her life in dissipation or whatever. And anyways, she dies. And as she dies, her guardian, for people who don't know, when you die, demons and angels come to fight over your soul. Is a well attested phenomena. But anyway, okay, so she dies, and this angel comes to take her, um uh and sort of is having an argument with the demon, and basically kind of lays out in front of her and in front of the adversary, lays out every beautiful thing that, like, every moment, every encounter that she'd had with beauty in her life, right? Not so much things that she'd done, but just times that she'd seen beauty and recognized it, right? And sort of makes this as the case for saving her soul. And the story kind of ends in a sort of ambiguous way, but I think the point is that when Dostoevsky says beauty will save the world, actually, that's not what he says. He says and this is in a book called The Idiot, by the way, where somebody says to the main character, "Didn't you once say, O Prince, that beauty would save the world?" And it's a question, and the question is not answered explicitly
Mm.
by the character that it's asked to, right? And of course, that is something about beauty, like that's something about beauty itself. Beauty is it is a question, right? It is a question, and so as much as people can have those beautiful experiences of walking into a pre-sanctified liturgy on a Wednesday night in the middle of Great Lent, or reading a beautiful fairy tale, or experiencing beauty in some other way in the natural world and so on, right? As many of those experiences as you can kind of have, those are the palliative for what happened at the debates last week. Those are the remedy for just the absolute, like, soul corrupting rot gut that is on all of our streaming services now. So I that's I don't know. I like I said, if you ask me things like, well, what does success look like to you? I mean, there's the business part of my brain that could break down, here's what it looks like and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, this is what it's about.